Hello, and welcome back to A Table for One. I'm Jamie Lenhart, and if this is your first week joining us, I want to give you an extra welcome. This is our 5th week doing A Table for One, and this week we have a good friend of mine, Dustin Minder, is going to be joining us with a new conversation or interview he and I had earlier this week. So that's going to be coming a little bit later. But before we get there, let's do our meditation moment right off the bat. Just take a moment in the chaos of our week to just center ourselves a little bit. So we're going to go into our meditation moment. After recording the conversation this week with Dustin, I really was just ruminating on a lot of what he had to share and what we talked about. And God started to just birth something inside of me, and I had to really ponder it for a little while. And he brought me to 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 6 through 8. And again, I'm going to be reading from the NASB. And it reads, "Now this I say, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each one must do just as he has proposed in his heart, not grudgingly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that always having all sufficiency in everything, you may have an abundance for every good deed." And this section is about caring for people, and it often I heard it taught more along the lines of giving to the poor or providing for the ministry or some things like that. But it's caring for others, and I think there's actually another application that I haven't heard very often with this, and it's because I think there's a relational aspect, and especially towards the marriage relationship. You see, it's easy, especially in the marriage relationship, I feel, but it's in almost anywhere, that there's a point when we're serving others or caring for others that it can become a begrudging thing, that we do it grudgingly, that rather than doing it out of a willful and a joyful and a loving place, it's like, okay, well, I said I'm going to do it, so I'm going to do it. And we do it, and sometimes we can have a bad attitude while we do it. And I know that within a marriage relationship, it's easy for that to creep in. Because we're in the midst of seeing the goods and the bads, and that person, that relationship, for some reason, often gets the worst part of us because they're always there. That we're cognizant of our attitude and our words normally around other people. But when we get home, behind those closed doors, we let our guard down. And we forget that that's somebody that we have to care for. That's somebody that we have to love and be compassionate and not just unload on. And, God wants us to serve out of compassion, out of love, not obligation. Not that obligation is wrong. I mean, there are things we do for people in our lives because we care for them, and we care for our children in some ways out of obligation. We must do it. We must do certain things for our spouse. There's even in ministry the times that we feel like we have to do it. And it's not necessarily wrong, but when that becomes the foundation point, the crux of why we're doing something, it no longer is an act of love. It actually can become toxic. And God wants us to serve out of love. He wants us to do it out of joy. He wants us to be cheerful in it. So what I want to do tonight is, first, let's ask God, just on our own, where have we begun to give out of obligation or with that bad attitude? And then for our meditation, just keep this kind of thought or phrase in our mind, and it's, God, I will give and serve others freely and with abundance. That if we are doing it freely, it's with no strings attached, with no scorecard, no agenda, and in abundance, saying that I will give as much as I can because I know God will fill the rest. So first is the where have I begun to give out of obligation and begrudgingly, maybe with a bad attitude, and then to shift our focus and say that's not where I'm going to remain, and God, I want to give and serve others like you freely and with abundance. So let's sit up, begin to breathe deep, and let's meditate on that for just 30 seconds. Now, if the Spirit has already started to reveal to you, oh man, there's an area that I'm not doing this with a very good attitude, that's okay. But also, if you didn't identify anything in that little bit of time we had, that's okay. But I'm not saying this as a you thing. This is me too. We all fall into this trap in our lives. So what I want to encourage is let's do this as an exercise over the next week. Just continually go to God and ask, where am I serving or giving of myself? And it's out of obligation and with a bad attitude rather than out of the heart that you want me to have, God. And then let's recenter our thoughts, saying, God, I want to give to others freely. I want to give to my spouse, to my children, to my family, to my church, to my community, freely and with abundance. And let Him fill in the gaps and Him carry us through that with His power and authority. Let's do that together this week, and let's see what happens. Now, I want to shift from this to, we're going to go into our next section where we have a conversation between myself and Dustin Minder. It was a fun time. Actually, I had to edit it down quite a bit because we chatted for almost 30 minutes and that was really long, and it was kind of winding because he's a friend and it was just, we laughed and we had a good time. But I trimmed it down a little bit so it was the main content. I really hope you enjoy it. So now it's time for our table talk. Okay, Dustin, thanks for being with us this week.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I've gotten to know you more over the last couple of years. I knew you from a distance before.
Yeah, we knew of each other, or you were a couple years ahead of me. You've always a leader in like the high school or middle school when I was attending high school or middle school.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, one of the main things I remembered about you younger was you playing drums with, I think it was like with David Smith and...
David Smith and Conrad, some of the old high school kids. We were in a band. Yeah,
that was
great for me.
For our first question tonight, what would you say has been the biggest thing you've learned being a dad?
Oh my gosh, that's a deep question right out the gate. Just gonna say, the biggest thing I've learned is they kind of watch everything you do. You know, you're kind of under a microscope because they want to know what adults are like. And, you know, I want to set a good example. And, you know, I haven't always set the good example when they were really little. And, you know, want to make sure that they see me as someone who understands that God is a redeeming God. And there's a reason to follow God, you know, and I kind of want to set that example
Yeah.
to the best that I can. I have my days, as all parents do.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
gonna be real honest. Yeah, you know, but I at least am now trying to get them to see me doing stuff with God or talking, having them ask more questions about God, even if I don't have the answers, getting them curious about God, you know.
A not so deep question. What is the weirdest thing you've learned as a dad?
The weirdest thing I've learned as a dad is I've tried to keep up with my kids by watching YouTube videos to learn how they dance, you know, the whole floss thing. And I had to teach myself how to do the floss so I could do it with my son. And he thought it was so cool. No idea what this dance move was. You're starting to get older when your kids are saying phrases and words. You're like, what is that? He's like, you're such a noob, Dad. And I'm like,
what?
Call me a noob? Is that even what?
So during this whole time, you've still been working at Whiffenstock, and so you're doing, you know, full days there, and then coming home to the joy of two wild kids and a wife that's trying to work from home and all that type of stuff. What's the thing that you like to do to connect with your kids?
When I come home, usually they like to either play a board game or, you know, some sort of game, or sit down and play a video game with me, or show me something they did, you know. So I try to just sit with them for a little bit when I come home, you know, what are you doing? What did you do today? Kind of thing. Yeah. Or I'll spend a little time with one, a little time with the other, because trying to spend time with both at the same time, because they're very competitive, like trying to play a board game with both of them is a challenge. It's fun when it works, and it's rare that it works out that way. But so sometimes I'll just have to divide my time so that way there's not a lot of fighting. You get 10 minutes, you get 10 minutes, and then I got some stuff to do around the house, and then dinner. But you know,
yeah, no, totally. Yeah, my kids just learned go fish, and Julian did not take his first loss well.
Yeah, losing's not fun.
No. What's God been talking to you about in this season?
Really talking to me about things that I thought I had let go in the past, things I'm still holding on to that you thought you've dealt with, you know, that kind of keep bubbling up in certain areas. And you're like, I thought it. So for me, he's really engaging me on what am I actually letting go? Because you think you let go of something because maybe you're not acting out in bad behavior or below the line or not the kingdom of not God, whatever you want to call it. You know, you're not acting out in sinful or inappropriate ways, but that doesn't mean you've dealt with the issue. So where I might not have said something rude in a moment to somebody, because I'm like, all right, I didn't say something mean to that person. Yes, I got it. But I didn't deal with why that mean thing wanted to come out in the first place. Okay. So I just kind of pressed it down, and I dealt with the behavior, which was great. I didn't damage somebody else in that process, but then later I damaged myself emotionally, or it'll just come out later and I haven't, you know. So I didn't say it then, but I might say it later if I don't deal with it. So God's really like, okay, you've got some stuff that you kind of suppressed, which I'm glad you didn't hurt that person, but now we got to focus on this. So.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's. When we first met, you and your wife you were both working, also obviously raising kids and all that. And more recently, she got hired on at the church, and then now has been, you know, our children's director or pastor. And that, I know for you, obviously that's a change in some things, because it's a different type of job. It's a job that you don't necessarily leave everything at work. But also it was something you and I had conversations about, kind of your heart in that time of wanting to see her really dig into that and explore that, and really support her in that. So tell me a little bit about what God did in you as she stepped into this new role and new position with the church.
Well, I've always had a heart for youth and young kids. I've helped with the middle school, and Adam Tubbs led it for like 7 years. I'm helping with Tony on and off at high school and middle school. And then when my wife got hired on, it was just more like she's really passionate about this, and I want to see her succeed, and I want to see, these kids experience God. And, you know, being in ministry, you can't do it alone. Even if she has a team behind her, I want her to know that I'm behind her as well. So she has someone she can relate with when she comes home, or talk to about it, or on some level, I want to be there.
Yeah. Did her taking on that role change the dynamic at home of how things were handled there?
Yeah, definitely. Just in the work schedule and the workflow, where, I mean, when the kids went to school, she had a little more time to go to the office, but then she had to do school pickup and stuff. So there were evenings or Saturdays, where she'd go in, where she didn't before, or whatever, and try to get stuff done, which is, she doesn't get to work necessarily a full 8-hour day like I got to work. So me being able to say, okay, I'm home from work, like, you can go now. Like, I know you got to get stuff done, and just allowing her to take that time,
Yeah.
So it definitely changed, the scheduling and workflow of the house, but yeah, it worked.
So, have you found yourself doing different things than you did before? Like, did you have to, like, reorganize the? I know, like, for Sarah and I, when she went back to work, we ended up, juggling the chores of, like, where maybe at times she was doing more of one set, say the laundry, and then that shifted over to me because I had time to do it. Or have you guys kind of gone into any of those types of things?
There's certain things that definitely, as someone who likes to achieve goals and feel accomplished, she likes to do a lot of the things around the house, So, but there's certain things that, she just can't do everything, so I tried to take on some things, like doing the dishes where I knew I could do that, or if she cooks dinner, then I'll clean up and put the food away, or if I've cooked, she's done a good job of putting the stuff away. We kind of just switch wherever it's needed, and there's some things that I know are specifically her, she likes doing them, and I just leave them for her, because I don't know how she likes her clothes folded, so I'm not going to even touch that.
No, that's an area where I don't even go.
Yeah, but I try to get the boys to clean their rooms,
Now, I know you used to help with, you mentioned, and you used to help with middle school, and you're still helping with high school. But something I've noticed you get more involved in is obviously working with the children's ministry too.
Yeah.
Is that specifically to help her where, because I know she's always needing volunteers, because that's one of those volunteer heavy areas. Is that one of the areas that you help out at the church then to support her?
Yeah. That's definitely something I like to do to support, but not only just for her, but as I've done it, I've learned a lot from the kids. I've learned a lot about myself, and there's certain age groups that I didn't think I connected well with or was good at, like teaching, but it really wasn't about teaching. It was just hanging out with them, and it was kind of just fun to hang out with the littles because they just like to imagine or play shop or whatever, or wrestle with you, and some of the older kids like to ask you some questions or play little silly games or jokes, like the fifth graders. And I love the fifth graders. Like, I really connected with that age group. They're just so curious,
Yeah. Part of what spurred my thought about having this conversation was because there were multiple times over the last year or so where I know I would talk to you, or somebody would be like, "Hey, Dustin, what would you think about doing this or being a part of this?" And your reply sometimes was surprising, because honestly your name gets tossed around. So it's like when we're like, "Oh, who should we have do something?" We're like, "Has anybody talked to Dustin? He likes being involved in doing these things. He loves doing ministry." We're like, "Okay, let's talk to Dustin." And then I'd hear, "Well, maybe not right now. Let me think about that. I really want to support my wife right now." And so what was God talking to you in that? Because obviously you have a passion for ministry, and you were giving the option, and then you're like, I don't know if this is right now.
Yeah. I mean, well, like you said, I help with high school. I try to help my wife, and I do worship. And there's some other small group stuff that's been happening outside the church, for other stuff that I've been doing. So I'm really just trying to be like, I love ministry, but I have seen a lot of people go full board, or you've heard stories of pastors or people who go all in, and, their marriage falls apart, or they're, they get too overwhelmed or burnt out, So as much as I may not be in a lead role, like a pastor or anything like that,
Yeah.
I still, at a volunteer level, want to make sure that I have the energy to volunteer for the stuff I've already committed to.
Yeah.
And anything extra will be something that I talk to God about and make sure, God, it's just something for the season that you want me to do. And if so, help me have the energy or the time, show me where I can shuffle things around or what I can do,
Mm-hmm. What has been the biggest challenge for you in trying to facilitate and support your wife as being in a pastoral role?
I think the hardest challenge, has been our schedule. Like, yes, I'm supporting you, but what things are we neglecting? Like, you still need to get things done, and the kids, and balancing who's picking them up and who's working and who's working when. And then we're married, so we want to spend time with each other and kind of, make that a priority as well. But then exhaustion from this or that. And so I think the struggle is balancing what we already have, then the big one.
If there is one thing you could encourage any other husbands to do to support their wives in what they're doing, be it ministry, be it work, whatever it may be, from husband to husband,
I think the one thing I would encourage them is, it may not feel like an encouragement, but it's sacrificing for the sake of someone else or your marriage. Is there something in your life that is maybe a constant or regular that you go to for relaxation or for whatever, or you like to do, sacrificing something that maybe is important to you to give your wife more time to do something that's important to her, I think servitude is definitely something on God's heart, being able to serve. And a lot of serving requires some sacrifice and giving up your wants and your needs and your desires for somebody else, Yeah. And that doesn't mean doesn't mean you totally get rid of it or that you still don't get to do it. You just are prioritizing health for somebody else. Yeah. And God blesses that. So you're not going to be left, high and dry. Like, He honors the sacrifice of what you're doing for somebody else, and you will get fed. He will take care of you.
Well, Dustin, thanks for chatting with me.
Thanks for having me. It's fun.
It's been we've jumped around a little bit places, and but I love getting to talk with you. I love to hear what God's doing in you and your family, and I love seeing what's happening in your family with as you both are following God and raising two wild but very entertaining boys.
Well, they're very entertaining.
So thank you for being with us this week, and I will cut you loose to be with your family.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie. Bye.
Bye. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I just kind of laughing to myself because I had a funny moment right starting to record here. I have really bright lights on to light things okay for the camera, and I didn't know that the pen I used to write these questions I'm going to leave with you, I wrote them in my daughter's glitter pen, so like I sat down in something that's all shimmery and everything. It was just kind of funny. I'm not going to let her know that I used her glitter pen. She loves those glitter pens. But I have 3 questions I want to leave with you, and just for you to discuss at home or with someone else, and for you to ask yourself and go to God with. So the first one is to ask someone else in your life, a spouse, a sibling, a parent, just somebody around you, saying, is there a dream that I can help facilitate? Or if you don't have somebody near you right now in this season, it can even just be, is there something that I can facilitate for somebody else in my life? And then with one of the things that Dustin said, number two is there something I need to sacrifice for this? Is there something in my life that I need to give up right now? It might not be a bad thing, but maybe just I need to take a break from it or reduce that to make room elsewhere. And then the third one is, what unresolved issue does God want to work out in me now in this season? Because the reality is we all have stuff that God is working on. And that was something really honest that Dustin said, that he's has some stuff that God's bringing up to work through in him right now, that he had squished down, thought maybe, well, it's dealt with, and it wasn't really dealt with. It was just pushed aside. So God's always wanting to work on those in us. And sometimes we have to say, okay, God, what are we working on today that I need to deal with? I need to pull out at the root. So again, those three things are, is there a dream I can help facilitate? And that's asking to another person or trying to identify in another person. And two, is there something I need to sacrifice in this season? And three, what unresolved issue does God want to work out in me now at this time of my life? I'll leave you with these, and thank you very much for being with us this week. And join us again next week for our next conversation at A Table for One.